Subclassing has come to the Elder Scrolls Online, giving us more build options now than ever. The amount of freedom that ESO players have to mix and match skills and skill lines is pretty insane, with literally thousands of options to choose from. So the only question now is, where do you start? Well, luckily I've been testing tons of different combinations for the past month already on the public test server, and I've come up with this list of my top 10 favorite builds for subclassing, which should give you a great starting point. So whether you play PvE or PvP, solo or in groups, there should be something here to help you get started on your subclassing journey. As always, links and timestamps are provided down below for all the different builds in this video, so make sure to use those to rewatch a build or just follow along with the written guide if you prefer. Before we get started though, here's a quick word from today's video sponsor, Boot.dev. You guys know that I've worked with Boot.dev before when I needed to learn JavaScript to update my website, hacktheminotaur.com, but Boot.dev is great for so much more. From learning Python to SQL to TypeScript in a way that's easy and fun for gamers. That's because Boot.dev treats learning programming just like leveling up in an RPG, where you earn experience by completing challenges, unlock chests for bonus rewards and loot, and add new pages to your spellbook with helpful notes for review. Boot.dev has a full community of gamers just like you and me, and even hosts regular community boss battles for everyone to join. Plus, you can use Boot.dev to get a real job in programming and earn an amazing real-world salary. According to Stack Overflow, the median salary for back-end developers in the US in 2024 was over $100,000. All of Boot.dev's content is free to read and watch in guest mode, while a paid membership unlocks more interactive features like hands-on coding, AI assistance, and progress tracking to gamify your learning. That's in addition to their 30-day no questions asked refund policy and a free demo of the interactive experience for every single course. And there's literally dozens of courses to choose from. Remember, you can't learn to code without doing the fundamentals, writing a lot of code and building real-world projects, all of which Boot.dev does through daily challenges and a real community. With Boot.dev, you're never bored, so you can actually reach your goals. So go to Boot.dev right now to try out their courses for free. Then just use my code HackTheMinotaur to get 25% off your first year if you choose the annual plan. Huge thanks again to Boot.dev for sponsoring this video, and let's get right back into it. So coming in at number 10, we have the Subclassing Werewolf build, and I know what you're thinking, werewolves don't get class skills, and that's true, but they do get class passives, which means that you can now take all the best passives from 3 different classes and mash them together to get the best version of your werewolf build thanks to subclassing. For this one, I've started with the classic Sorcerer Stormcalling, which is still great for werewolves thanks to Capacitor for the bonus health, magicka, and stamina recovery, Energize for the bonus physical damage, and Amplitude for up to 10% bonus damage based on enemy missing health. Combined with that, we've got Adric Spear from the Templar class, which werewolves can take advantage of via Burning Light for some extra damage, and the amazing Balanced Warrior passive, which now provides a huge 6% bonus weapon and spell damage, along with an extra 6% bonus to armor. And finally, we have the Necromancer's Gravelord skill line, which we can only use Rapid Rot, this passive, while transformed into Werewolf, but we do have a surprising amount of dots in Werewolf form, including Claws of Life, but also light attacks and the secondary attack from Brutal Pounce. So the difference here with Gravelord is actually very noticeable. Now in terms of sets on this build, there are some new ones we can take advantage of as well, such as the new Crafted Tideborn set, which gives us very nice 2 through 4 piece stat bonuses, along with an additional 12% bonus direct damage versus monsters. This combines nicely with Order's Wrath for even more critical chance and crit damage, and I do still recommend the Oaken Soul Ring if you like the werewolf playstyle, along with 1 piece of Slimecraw or another additional crit chance monster set. So yeah, the werewolf build with subclassing is possible, and it's actually pretty good. Hopefully we'll get some werewolf scribing skills though in the future to really make this build cook. Coming in at number 9, we've got the Zookeeper build, a pet specialist which brings an army of summoned minions into combat, including damage, tank, and healer focused pets that can easily solo most content in the game. Plus it just looks insane to have this many creatures following you around in game. Now in terms of subclassing skill lines, we're going to start as a sorcerer, keeping the Daedric summoning skill line intact. Now this of course has many good options for pets. For example, if you're playing completely solo, you can choose the unstable clan fear morph, and this will actually draw aggro from mobs and tank for you. Then we've got Twilight Tormentor for damage, or you could instead morph this to Twilight Matriarch for a ton of potential healing. Hardened Ward from the skill line also comes in handy, not only for keeping you alive, but also for shielding your pets, helping them stay alive longer as well. Next, we've added in Animal Companions from the Warden class, which gives us our next permanent pet, the powerful Eternal Guardian ultimate. Now, this bear ultimate even revives itself when killed, which is pretty awesome. Not really a pet, but Deep Fisher is basically the best for solo builds, as this skill debuffs enemies with both major and minor breach, decreasing their total armor by about 10,000 resistance. That is pretty insane. And finally, we're grabbing the Necromancer Gravelord skill line here. Not so much for the skills, but essentially for the passives. The Death Knell, for example, gives us a whopping 20% bonus critical chance versus low health enemies. Dismember gives us over 3,000 extra penetration, which is great for soloing. And Rapid Rot boosts our damage over time effects by 10%, which also buffs our Lightning Staff heavy attacks for the channeled portion of the attack at least, which is a nice bonus. Now, you will need just one active Gravelord skill to get all of these bonuses, so I typically prefer the Skeletal Arcanist as it has a nice long duration, some extra AoE damage, and basically looks like another Daedric pet, so it fits the theme of the build very nicely. Moving on to gear sets, we can get even more pets, my personal favorite here being the Maw of the Infernal Monsters set, which gives us a nice fire-breathing Daedroth pet, increasing the size of our summoned army. Since we're also weaving in those heavy attacks, Sergeant Mail can give us a great boost in damage, and the Oakensoul Ring makes this build extremely strong and simple at the same time, giving us lots of powerful buffs with only one skill bar and no bar swapping to worry about. And keep in mind, I do have a full video guide for the Zookeeper build, which you can find linked down below, or just check out the written guide link, whichever you prefer if you want to see all the details. Now, staying on that heavy attack sorcerer theme for just a minute, we've got the Infinity One Bar Magicka Sorcerer coming in next, now updated for subclassing. This basically is taking the one bar heavy attack approach, but making it even stronger with a few choice skill changes. Now, in terms of skill lines, we're obviously staying as a Magicka Sorcerer because Stormcalling is just really good for one bar heavy attack builds. You of course have Critical Surge here, which is great for soloing thanks to the passive healing it provides every 1 second. This is basically all the survivability that you need, but you also get passives like Energize, which boosts your shock damage, which will buff the Lightning Staff heavy attack. From there though, you have some options like Nightblade's Assassination skill line, which gives you the powerful Relentless Focus skill. This one can be stacked up to 10 times for a huge 400 weapon and spell damage bonus, or you can fire off the Spectral Bow for some nice damage and a burst heal. Also, don't forget the ultimate here, Soul Harvest increases all of your damage against a target by 20%, so basically amplifies everything we do, and also rewards 10 ultimate back on kills. But it's the passives here that truly put this easy one bar sorcerer over the top, with Master Assassin giving bonus crit chance while flanking, Executioner giving even more bonus sustain, Pressure Points giving us more crit chance, and then the Hemorrhage passive providing a huge 10% crit damage, along with Minor Savagery for even more critical chance. So it's very possible on this build to get over 70% crit chance, even just by using basic crafted or overland sets with the Assassination skill line, which is why it's just so good. And now for the solo setup, we're also grabbing Necromancer's Gravelord skill lines for some much needed AoE major breach and minor vulnerability from Unnerving Boneyard, plus all the great Necromancer passive which we mentioned earlier on the Zookeeper build. This is just one version of the one bar sorcerer, of course, and I have different versions on the website and in the build video, including a version that still uses Daedric summoning, so check that out below if you're interested. But in terms of sets here, we're running the pretty typical heavy attack one bar setup. Of course, you'll want the Oakensoul Ring to provide all the major and minor buffs that you need to make this build easy. With that, we're also combining Sergeant's Mail for the bonus heavy attack damage, and then a second heavy attack set. For example, Stormmaster will be extremely good here with the high crit chance stat that we already have. And then you can combine this with just one piece of Slimecraw. Coming in at number 7 on this list is a subclassing PvP build I like to call the Wrecking Ball. Basically, the focus of this build is AoE timed burst damage and debuffs, letting you unload a crap ton of damage and negative status effects on your enemies all at once. In terms of class skill lines, we're starting this one with one of my favorite PvP options, actually the Dragon Knight class, and specifically Draconic Power, which gives us the amazing Dragon Leap ultimate for big burst damage, mobility, and a stun. We'll be able to pick up Hardened Armor for defense here, as well as Coagulating Blood for a strong heal, that scales up with our missing health. Now, along with that, we've combined another devastating PvP skill line, which is going to be Warden's Animal Companions. This one gives us even more timed burst with Deep Fissure, which also debuffs enemy armor with both Major and Minor Breach. You can pick up a nice damage and sustain buff here as well with the Bullnetch ability. And finally, from the Necromancer Gravelord skill line, we're adding in Blighted Blast Bones for even more AoE damage plus Major Defile, making enemies heal for a lot less. You can even run the Colossus ultimate here for a big burst of damage when the timing is right. So all in all, this is a pretty devastating combo, as you can time Fissure, Blast Bones, and Leap to all combine at essentially the same time for a massive mid-air explosion. And then you can finish off anything left over with Reverse Slice from the two-handed skill line, or something like Whirling Blades from the Dual Wield skill line. In terms of sets on this one, I'm a big fan of the Balorg monster set for PvP. This gives you a nice damage and penetration bonus after firing off those ultimates. Combining this with an AoE damage set really makes a lot of sense. Something like Dagon's Dominion can help scale up those damage spikes even further. And I like to pair this with a sustain set as well. Something like Wretched Vitality, which can help make up for not using the Dragon Knight's Earth and Heart skill line with the accompanying Battle Roar passive for sustain. But yeah, this one is extremely fun, great for both solo and group PvP. Plus, it's relatively easy to set up. Check out the written guide down below if you would like to see more details on that one. But let's move into more group builds next. Coming in at number 6, talking about our Subclassing Healer build. Healers that want to make use of subclassing can be pretty strong now, basically combining the best heals and buffs from all class kits into one cohesive build. Now, personally, I am a big fan of Warden healers, so I use the Warden here as my main healing class, but you can actually make this build work on any of the 3 classes I'm going to mention, because this does not use scribing, class scripts, or even class sets. Now, starting off, green balance from the Warden is going to be pretty important for healers to run in Update 46, due primarily to the Maturation passive, which gives the group minor toughness buff, which increases everyone's max health by 10%. Skills like Budding Seeds are also a good choice for the skill line due to its powerful AoE healing potential, and even Lotus Flower is a good option here if you need a skill for Major Savagery and Prophecy, along with some extra passive healing on light and heavy attacks. The focus of this build, however, is definitely Ultimate Generation, and that's where things really amp up with our next skill line, which is going to be Siphoning from the Nightblade class. The passives here are fantastic for healers. Catalyst gives 30 ultimate when drinking a potion. Magicka Flood gives 6% extra magicka and stamina. Soul Siphoner increases all healing done for each siphoning ability slotted. And then Transfer gives us 2 ultimate every 4 seconds. This can easily be procced on the front bar with a skill like Funnel Health, which is actually a heal over time for multiple players. In addition, we can slot Siphoning attacks for some really amazing sustain, and then Soul Siphon for an instant group emergency heal and heal over time that comes with Major Vitality for a relatively low ultimate cost. Now with this skill line, just make sure to have at least 1 siphoning skill slotted on each skill bar to make use of the passives. For example, I have 2 siphoning skills on my front bar for the increased healing passives, and then 1 on the back. Then finally, the Restoring Light skill line from the Templar adds even more healing potential and utility here. Extended Ritual, for example, provides an AoE purge, which is going to be essential in some endgame content to remove negative effects from your group. And then you also have Channeled Focus, which is our armor buff and also provides Magicka sustain plus some self-healing. And of course, Breath of Life is a strong burst heal for up to 2 party members. But the passives here are pretty great for healing as well. Mending, for example, now increases all healing done. That's across all skill lines now, which is pretty fantastic. And you have Sacred Ground, giving you automatic access to minor mending. And of course, the Master Ritualist passive is great for resurrecting allies. So the blend of skills here across all 3 of these is insanely powerful, and it makes healing really, really easy. Now, in terms of sets on this one, I think the best sort of easy option you can go with is going to be Spell Power Cure, which provides major courage on overhealing. And we have so much passive healing and heal over time effects on this build that SPC is very easy to maintain. Also, with such high ultimate generation that we're getting specifically through those Nightblade passives, I recommend something like Master Architect, which you can backbar here, combined with something like Aggressive Horn to give your group easy access to Major Slayer. In terms of monster sets, healers and ESO actually have tons of great options. Some of this is obviously going to depend on your group and what content you're doing, but some of my favorites here are Nazare to extend debuffs on enemies, Symphony of Blades to provide sustain for your group, and Azazan the Inferno for extra armor and healing. If you have any questions on this one, or if you want to see all the best options, make sure to check out the link below for the written guide. But tanks for group content are also extremely strong and flexible now thanks to subclassing, which brings us to our next build on this list, the Subclassing Tank build that I've been having a blast playing so far in ESO. Now, I started this one out on my Dragon Knight tank, but as with our healer subclassing build, you can make this work on any of the classes listed here just fine, because we aren't using any class scripts or class sets on this one. So starting with Dragon Knight's Earth and Heart skill line, this is still one of the best options in ESO for tanking, though primarily due to its passives. Battle Roar is the standout here, which still gives us a great sustain option when we use our ultimate. Mountain's Blessing can be great for your group's damage as well, due to the extra weapon damage it provides, and the Helping Hands passive can help with sustain, though honestly we might not need this for most content. Now in terms of abilities here, Stone Giant is best for group content as stacking this increases damage taken by your enemies. Igneous Shield can also be used here to proc Helping Hands for some extra sustain, while also giving a decent sized shield plus major mending. Then you have access to Igneous Weapons, which is a great option for groups that need that major brutality and sorcery buff. Plus, Magma Shell is actually great for emergencies if your group is struggling with some content. But our next skill line I think is even better for tanks, and that's going to be Arcanist's Soldier of the Apocrypha, which is all around just an amazing skill line. For example, Crux Weaver Armor here gives us our major resolve buff, while also debuffing enemies with Minor Breach and generating Crux. You can spend that Crux on Spite Ward of the Lucid Mind for basically a free damage shield. This can essentially replace Igneous Shield if you don't need the stamina sustain from Helping Hands. A Rune Guard of the Still Waters is actually an amazing skill, giving our group Minor Resolve for more armor, as well as minor protection for ourselves. And then Runic Sunder can be used as both a melee and ranged taunt, basically helping you to save a bar slot on this build. Finally, the ultimate here, Gibbering Shelter, makes for a really great defensive option, providing a huge shield that can also affect allies. But the passives here are also really nice, including extra recovery for yourself, minor evasion for you and your group, ultimate generation when you consume Crux, plus some bonus armor that stacks with Mage or Resolve, helping us to easily hit the armor cap. Now finally, my pick for the third skill line here I think is fairly unique, and it gives us essentially infinite sustain and even more ult generation, and that's Siphoning from the Nightblade class. Now in terms of skills, Siphoning attacks is a no-brainer here. It's basically the best sustain skill in the game right now, but Power Extraction is actually pretty nice as well. You can use this for AoE damage and specifically to debuff enemies damage. And then the Soul Tether ultimate can even be a nice option for trash pulls due to its AoE stun. But the passives here really make the build powerful, including ultimate generation from Catalyst and transfer, which is going to proc from Power Extraction. The Magicka Flood, which is actually pretty nice for tanks, giving us that bonus 6% to stamina and magicka. But yeah, this combination has been amazing in my early testing so far. It's extremely fun to play, gives a lot of solid group utility while also having lots of sustain and survivability. In terms of sets here, the go-to for group content will be Saxhleel Champion if you can access it due to the additional uptime for major force when you hit your ultimates. And remember, we have a lot of ultimate generation on this build. Powerful Assault still makes sense, and you can easily backbar this and maintain the proc with Razor Caltrops. And finally, in terms of monster sets, Archdruid is going to be one of the strongest options thanks to its on-demand major vulnerability. But as always, I'll have lots of other more beginner-friendly options linked down below in the written guide, so be sure to check that one out if you are interested. Now, in terms of DPS builds using subclassing, there does seem to be a handful of really powerful setups, especially using the Arcanist class, so that's what I'm going to start with here. The main skill line, of course, would be Herald of the Tome due to Fate Carver being such a beast skill overall. You can choose the Pragmatic morph here if you want the shield, or the Exhausting morph if you want a slightly longer duration. Along with that, you'll want Cephaliarch's Flail for more damage, Crux generation and healing, and Recuperative Treaties I'll usually stick on the back bar for that extra sustain, Crux generation, plus major sorcery and brutality. And you could also slot Languid Eye when you need an AoE ultimate, but we generally have a better ult through subclassing, which we'll get into next. That, of course, is coming from our next skill line, which is Assassination from the Nightblade class. This skill line has just about everything you'd want for a DPS build and more. In terms of skills, you have Relentless Focus, which we already talked about. You can stack this up for passive 400 weapon and spell damage without even using the ability. And then Soul Harvest, which increases your damage against a target by 20% for 8 seconds. That's a huge buff. But the real power of this skill line is definitely in its passives, with Master Assassin giving another 6.6 critical chance while flanking, Executioner giving a ton of sustain, Pressure Points giving even more crit chance per assassination ability slotted, and finally the Hemorrhaging passive, which gives us 10% bonus crit damage plus Minor Savagery for even more crit chance. So Nightblade is definitely the king of crit when it comes to subclassing, so grabbing this skill line for any DPS build makes a lot of sense. Now you do have some options when it comes to your third skill line here. Personally, I like using Templar's Dawn's Wrath. The main reason for that is the Radiant Glory Execute. This has huge scaling, so for single target fights, switching over to this away from Fate Carver will actually result in a DPS increase. Solar Barrage too from the skill line is a pretty interesting ability, as this buffs all class skills damage by 5%, not just Templar skills, which makes it a perfect option for subclassing. In terms of passives, these are also quite good, especially Prism for the ultimate generation, Illuminate for minor sorcery, plus Restoring Spirit for the cost reduction of all skills and ultimates. And one other note here in terms of skills is actually from Scribing, and that's Banner Bearer. Now, this skill actually makes it preferable to be an Arcanist for this build as your starting class, because you can use the Arcanist class script to generate Crux even faster, and this will get you back to that Fate Carver beam quicker than without it, though it does take a hit on your sustain to run this skill, so make sure you do prepare for that. But in terms of sets, something that works extremely well on this type of build right now is the new crafted Tideborn Wildstalker. This is effective because both Fate Carver and Radiant were changed in Update 46 to deal direct damage, and Tideborn does a great job of buffing that versus monsters, not to mention we have lots of other direct damage abilities on top of that. Null Arca is another solid DPS set if you have access to trials and you really want to push the limit of what this build can do, and you'll also want to pick up the Velothi Urmage's Amulet Mythic for an additional 15% bonus damage done at all times. So this is definitely one of the most effective combinations that I've tried, and it's definitely well worth checking out now thanks to subclassing. But next is something I'm calling the Elementalist Build, and this is basically a mage that specializes in the 3 main magical elements of ESO, that being fire, shock, and frost. And now fire is obvious. We're going to be going with Dragonite's Ardent Flame skill line for this, and it's actually quite good, especially for solo play. Here you have a wide range of damage and healing skills, for example Burning Embers for a heal over time and burst heal, as well as Cauterize or Flames of Oblivion, whichever morph you prefer, and to enhance that fire damage further, Engulfing Flames. Plus we've got passives like World in Ruin, which buff our fire damage. So you can see we've got the fire magic theme handled nicely. Then for shock, again, probably no surprise here, we can pick up Storm Calling from the Sorcerer class with skills like Boundless Storm for AoE shock damage, armor, and speed, and of course Critical Surge, which amps up our healing even more. And then we've got Energized for bonus shock damage passively, along with Amplitude for bonus damage based on enemies missing health, and then Capacitor for even more recovery, which is always nice. And finally, for a bit of a wild card here, I've gone with Necromancer's Gravelord skill line to represent our frost damage. For this build, especially for solo play, Gravelord just offers way more utility, plus better passives. Specifically, I can use Gravelord's Sacrifice to buff all of my dots, of which I have many on this build, then use Unnerving Boneyard for frost damage and AoE Major Breach, plus the Glacial Colossus ultimate for AoE major vulnerability. Our passives provide even more bonus dot damage thanks to Rapid Rot, greater penetration thanks to the Dismember passive, and more critical chance thanks to Death Knell. So overall, this one really rounds out the build perfectly, especially for solo play. Now in terms of sets, you actually have way too many options in ESO that support elemental damage, so I went with something a bit more general here. Deadly Strike is going to be great for amplifying dots, which again we have lots of on this build, as well as the channeled portion of our shock staff, and then something like Runecarver's Blaze, which will attach bonus fire damage to every dot that we do, which results in a sizable damage increase. You can of course do lots of different monster sets here, such as Zon for more fire damage, but I went with the Sea Serpent's Coil Mythic instead for greater damage reduction, plus access to Major Berserk and Major Courage, which is very nice for soloing. All in all, this is going to be a very good setup if you like the idea of harnessing all three elemental types into just one build, and it is definitely a lot of fun to play. Now, building off that elemental theme we just saw is actually something I've always wanted to try in ESO, and that is a full-on Ice Mage build. This one was a surprise to me in terms of how good it actually worked, and this will be primarily for solo play, but with some tweaks, you could take this one into groups as well. And in terms of class skill lines here, we're actually starting with the Arcanist on this build due to how useful the Tentacular Dread ability is. This one does frost damage in an AoE in front of you, so it's quite powerful, but it also roots enemies and causes them to take up to 11% more damage with 3 Crux stacked. Now, we'll get how you can build Crux on this in just a minute, but we can also use Fulminating Rune here, which has a frost damage component, plus Recuperative Treatise for sustain and major brutality and sorcery. Next up is the obvious choice in terms of skill lines, which is going to be Winter's Embrace from the Warden, with skills like Ice Fortress for our armor buff, Winter's Revenge for AoE damage, plus Arctic Blast for a nice AoE stun and potential burst heal. The passives here, though, are amazing, especially Glacial Presence, upping our chilled status effect chances, and also Piercing Cold, which boosts frost damage by 15%. That is a huge buff. Oh, and you can use Northern Storm as well, or Permafrost as a defensive type of ultimate here, which is going to be great, obviously, for soloing. Now finally, the Gravelord skill line is going to be an excellent choice, as it was with our Elementalist. Not only do we get AoE Major Breach and Minor Vulnerability, but we also get that frosty ground pounding ultimate through Glacial Colossus, which gives us major vulnerability. So lots of debuffs on this one. Now the passives here are even stronger, as we said, with Death Knell giving us the bonus crit chance, Dismember giving bonus penetration, plus Rapid Rot buffing our damage over time effects, of which we have several. So as you can see, this really is the ideal combination as far as I'm concerned when it comes to an Ice Mage type of build. But one thing that we are definitely missing here is an Ice Spammable, which you can make yourself if you have access to scribing. Here I've gone with the Mage's Guild skill Ulfsild's Contingency, taking the Frost damage script, the Arcanist class script to generate Crux, which will power up Tentacular Dread for that additional debuff, plus the Minor Force script, which we didn't have access to Minor Force on this build otherwise. Now, there are many ways you can do this, obviously, with scribing, but if you want to use Tentacular Dread more effectively, this is probably the best way to do that. Now, in terms of sets too, you have many nice options for Frost builds, like the Frostbite set, which boosts your Frost damage abilities by 8%. I've also paired this one with Order's Wrath for even more crit chance and crit damage. And you can even choose a frosty monster set like Iceheart to round out this build, or just use the Pale Order Ring if you'll be playing exclusively solo. But yeah, this was probably the biggest surprise for me in terms of what subclassing can do to make the ultimate Ice Mage themed build. And I definitely recommend you check this one out. We've got a full video guide for it, as well as a written guide linked down below. But that brings us to the number 1 build on this list, being the One Bar Solo Magicka Templar. One of my all-time favorite builds in ESO, and definitely one of the most popular builds I have on this channel. So of course I had to update this one for subclassing, and it's just way better than the original. By the way, you can still find the original build on my website, including the original video, as I know people were asking for that as well. But in terms of subclassing skill lines here, our first choice is obvious. That's going to be Adric's Spear. But this line is so good for solo builds because, of course, sweeps. But it also includes probably my favorite damage shield ability in the game right now, called Radiant Ward. This shield increases in strength the more enemies you hit, so it's basically like a Magicka version of Brawler, but it also applies minor maim to those targets, and it deals direct damage back, so you can do some tricky things here, like using the Reaving Blows Champion Point star to also make this ability heal you back. So it's crazy good, but so are the passives in this skill line, like Piercing Spear for 12% bonus crit damage, Spear Wall for minor berserk and minor protection, Burning Light for even more magic damage, and then Balanced Warrior for some nice bonus damage and armor. The Animal Companion skill line was a nice surprise here, and it's really good for soloing, due to Deep Fissure applying both Major and Minor Breach to reduce enemy armor by about 10,000, then Vetcher Infection applies a nice damage over time and a debuff, Plus we get even more crit damage through the Advanced Species passive, and a massive 20% bonus to recoveries through the Flourish passive. So this is all really great stuff for supporting this 1-bar build. Finally, it just makes sense to run Assassination here to increase our overall damage output, as we've seen, especially through its passives, and then Merciless Resolve for bonus damage and a burst heal, as well as Soul Harvest, which is an excellent single target execute. Now this build is really fun, and it's especially easy to play, but also really powerful with the sets I've chosen here. First up, Tideborn is going to be one of the best options for Templars, due to jabs being direct damage, and you can craft it any way you want, which is going to be really nice for soloing. You could do like a heavy chest, for example, for more armor. But then we've combined that with the War Maiden set, which increases all of our magic damage, and this applies to every single damaging skill on this build. Now, notice that I said magic damage, not magical or basically elemental damage, including shock, frost, and fire. This doesn't buff those. It only buffs specific damage that says magic damage. Just read the tooltip on a skill like Puncturing Sweep, for example, and you'll see what I mean. It specifically says magic damage, not elemental. But again, this is gonna buff every single ability on this build, from Soul Harvest to Deep Fissure to Puncturing Sweep. So on this setup, it basically outperforms sets like Deadly Strike because it buffs every single thing that we do. Oh, and we've gone with a super simple 1-bar setup, of course, so you'll want the Oaken Soul Ring, and then one piece of Slime Craw to round out this build. So if you like this one, make sure to check out the video guide that we have for this one already. Link for that, of course, is down below, and let me know what you think in the comments about these subclassing builds, as well as your favorite builds for subclassing or what you plan on trying for yourself, and thanks again for watching. Hey everybody, just a quick note that if you're liking the new subclassing builds for ESO, I'm also releasing even more for our Tier 2 channel members called the Elite Squad, like our unkillable Druid build, which combines powerful fire and lightning magic along with animal companions to fight by your side. I've been having a ton of fun with this build too lately because it truly feels like a brand new class, a fully functioning Druid in ESO. It's epic. The members of our Tier 2 Elite Squad can unlock this build right now, along with dozens of other members-only builds and guides. So if you're interested in supporting the channel, it really is the best way to do it, because you get a truckload of bonus content, not to mention early access to videos and members-only Discord. Just be sure to select the Elite Squad option if you're interested, as this is the only membership with new content. To get started, just click on the join button down below or the membership link in the description to see our complete library of members-only builds and guides. And huge shout out as always to our channel members who make this channel possible. I truly could not do what I do without you, so thanks again. Thanks to all of you for watching this video. I hope you're doing well. Stay safe out there, and I will see you around in the next one.